Chair, we do have a quorum. You are welcome to start whenever you'd like.
Perfect. Welcome, everybody. So good morning. Welcome to the Maricopa County Continuum of Care Committee meeting. I am saddened to announce that MEG staff Sarah Kent has resigned her position, and her last day was Friday, July 16th. We do wish her well and hopes that our paths will cross soon. With that, the MEG staff, Chantel Aberton, will be filling in with the board and with the committee until someone has permanently filled this position. So we wish Sarah well. I'm gonna miss her energy. She has a lot of energy. For all participants, please mute your phone and your computer when not speaking, and please do not put your phone on hold. For all participants, we ask that you identify yourself when speaking, and we will be reminding people to do that throughout the meeting. I want to remind everyone that the procedure change regarding the chat feature in Zoom. So MEG operates committee meetings in full transparency, giving the public access to committee meetings, materials, and discussion. The public cannot view the chat comments, and as a result, we are disabling the chat feature in all committee meetings moving forward. So if you need technical assistance during a meeting, please contact the helpline at 602-452-5095. And again, that's 602-452-5095, or contact the MEG staff to assign meeting. So we appreciate the understanding and helping us to maintain transparent discussions for the benefit of the meeting. One final housekeeping item, all votes will be roll calls, and Chantel will call the roll after the motion is made. So with that, we will do a call to the audience. So please note that the public were given an opportunity to submit written comments relating to this meeting to the azmag.gov comment within 1 hour of the post start time for the meetings. Chantal, were there any comments received?
Chair, no comments were received for this item or any other item on the agenda.
Okay, thank you. And we will now move to the next meeting agenda. Agenda item number 3. We will need the approval of the June 9th, 2021 meeting minutes. So I'll just give you a minute to review that real quick and see if any member has any questions or comments on the meeting minutes. Okay, it does not sound, does anybody have anything? It does not sound, we have any questions or comments? So could I have a motion to approve the June 9th, 2021 Maricopa Regional Committee of Care Committee minutes?
This is Laura Scott Nikki. I move to approve.
Okay, so Laura Scott Nikki approves. Can I have a second, please?
This is Ty Rosensteel with Solari. I second.
Hi, okay, Ty Rosensteel is second. Is there a discussion on the motion? Okay. Now I will ask Chantel to proceed with a roll call vote. Please indicate clearly on the vote saying yay or nay after your name is called. Chantel?
All right, thank you, Chair. I'll start with Anna Verdugo for Vanessa Cartel. Anna?
Good morning.
Good morning.
We vote yes, please.
Okay, thank you. Richard Cruz?
Present.
And how do you vote?
Yes, yay.
Okay, thank you. Letitia Gambino?
Yay.
Thank you. Kathy Dinolfi?
Yay.
Thank you, Kathy. DC Ernst?
Yay.
Thank you. Michelle Jameson?
Yay.
Thank you. Wendy Johnson?
Yay.
Thank you, Wendy. Anne Marie Johnston? I don't think I see her. Anne Marie? Okay. Laura Magruder?
Yay.
Thank you, Laura. Jennifer Page?
Yay.
Thanks, Jennifer. Detective Aaron Rain?
Yay.
Thank you. Nikki Ramirez?
Yay, this is Gerardo Peña, proxy for Nikki, and I vote yay.
Okay. Thank you, Gerardo. Ty Rosensteel.
Yay.
Thank you, Ty. Chayla Schuster. Chayla, are you here? Okay. Sarah Sims.
Hi, I have to abstain. I wasn't at the June meeting.
Okay, thanks, Sarah.
Yep.
Laura Skotnicki.
Yay.
Thanks, Laura. And Craig Tripkin.
Yay.
Did I miss anybody?
Ann Johnston is here. Sorry, from Community Bridges.
Okay, thanks, Anne. How do you vote on the last meeting minutes?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? All right, the motion passes. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. So we'll go to agenda item number 4. So Ty Rosensteel, committee member and director of HMIS and data resources at Solari, will provide a presentation on the system flow dashboard, and the committee will have the opportunity to recommend how this information can be utilized and shared with providers, stakeholders, and the general public. So Ty?
Great. Hi, everybody. Again, my name is Ty Rosensteel with Solari. I am the director of HMIS. Really happy to be speaking with you today. I'm actually wondering if I could get TJ to do kind of a brief introduction just to this task and what exactly we are looking for the committee to provide feedback on today. He did that for the data subcommittee on Monday, and I think that introduction can be really helpful.
Sure, of course. Can you all hear me okay? Okay, awesome. So what we're looking for from the committee is a lot of feedback and thought on this. So the HMIS team has done an incredible job of putting together this data that you'll see in just a moment, which has been a long time coming, but extremely useful. However, it involves a lot of technicalities to it. And so really what we're trying to do is answer a few questions from you around this. So as you're looking at this, think about if there's any feedback that you have around the visuals itself. And then we're really going to be focused on recommending how this can be used to the board. So the idea from the data subcommittee and the recommendation from that group is that this information and this dashboard is public solely to, or not public, but is available to committees and work groups related to the continuum of care. And then quarterly, the data subcommittee would work with community partners and MAG to develop basically like a synopsis document. And so of the findings that would be publicly available. So really what we're looking at is, are you in agreement with that mechanism, that recommendation from the data subcommittee? And then the last thing is really a shift away from using solely the point in time to describe our homeless system. So the system flow is much more complex and is updated monthly versus the point in time, which is at one particular moment. So what we're looking to recommend to the board as well is, can we not ignore the point in time, right? We will still use the point in time. That is still a HUD metric that's still identified and useful. However, can we shift more of our messaging to be around the system flow? So in synopsis of all that, what we're looking for is feedback on this, agreement or other options for the mechanism for how this would be shared. The recommendation from the subcommittee was, again, this is only available to COC connected people, and then we would produce something publicly every quarter. And then the last thing is really just related to a shift in how we describe our homeless situation here in the county. Thanks, Ty. Back to you.
All right, thanks a lot, TJ. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and go through one slide and then the system flow dashboard itself. So the first is just a slide that I've shared before on what our by name list is and what our active list is. And this gets to one of the 2 points that TJ described around how the detailed information that comes from our by name list, showing the actual flow of people through the system, those that are actively homeless, those that are entering homelessness, and those that are exiting homelessness on any given month, that there's some real complexity to that, and that there's it's not always really easy to understand what that means unless you've sort of been included in these conversations and you've heard this process before. So just as a reminder, we generate this data on a monthly basis where we can say how many people are actively homeless. And then when we talk about inflow, we're breaking those folks into 3 categories: those that are new to homelessness for the first time, those that are returning from housing, and those that are returning from an active. And then on the outflow side, we're talking about those that are going into housing placements or those that just simply stopped receiving services and we don't know where they went. So the system flow dashboard is our local data generated out of the Hmis system for this specific visualization. So I will share my screen for this one. So now you should be seeing a Tableau dashboard that is a visual representation of the slide that I just presented. So at the top, we see the total number of people that are actively homeless, and you can see that it goes back from 2018 all the way to present. It tells us the population. So this is the singles population. We see the total inflow and total outflow. This one is interesting because it has this overlay effect. So when you see that the orange bar is greater than the blue bar, you know that the inflow is greater than the outflow. So if you see the orange bar is above the blue bar, you know that the number of actively homeless would increase. And that's exactly what you see. So from this time period in 2020, May of 2020, we see that our inflow is consistently above our outflow. So throughout that entire period, we would expect to see that we would see our actively homeless increase that entire time period. And that's exactly what we see, right? That we see an active increase that entire time period. And then if you want to know what's driving that, right? So our inflow is increasing, our inflow is greater than our outflow. You can then go to these detail areas. This first section is the detail of the inflow. So it describes what is going on. Do we have more new people entering homelessness? Do we have more people from housing? Do we have more people from an active? And you can follow those trend lines. And then specifically, you can also see the outflow detail, what is happening with our housing placements. Are those increasing or decreasing? So this is for one specific subpopulation. When you go up to the corner, you can hit the gear icon and you can change the population. And we have 9 different subpopulations to choose from. So the one that I started with was singles, but you can also filter the entire page to show all persons. So this will include singles, this will include families. This is total number of households. So if you hover over it, it'll actually show you the number of clients that are associated with those families. You can do a filter specifically for a number of new populations. So we previously had this data for veterans, chronic, families, and youth. We now have it for a number of additional populations. So we have 2 around race and ethnicity. We have white, non-Hispanic, and BIPOC. We have elderly as a population. We have unsheltered as a population as well. So clicking on any of these, I'll jump to the veteran population just because those are numbers that we've seen before as a community. And this, is very similar to what we've utilized in the past. In addition to the actual numbers themselves, we do have 2 additional tabs up at the top. We have a reliability measure that says how reliable is the data. So if we see the number really going up, you want to double check the reliability to just make sure that it wasn't a data integrity issue. And so this shows what the data integrity, what the reliability issue, or what the reliability looks like. A 15% threshold is identified by Community Solutions. They're the ones that sort of have built this framework around this type of reporting. They've said that a 15% reliability is very good. So anything better than 15% is excellent. And we're consistently achieving that. This can be filtered for different populations as well. And then we have an engine that just shows all of the raw data. So if we're looking to see an individual number, looking at the individual tables, that number is available. So that's the overview of the system flow dashboard. Again, we're looking for feedback on two very specific questions. The TJ outlined those. The first question is if we agree and approve on the data subcommittee recommendations. And TJ outlined those previously. The recommendations being that this dashboard be available to committees and work groups, board, etc., but not necessarily published as publicly available, sent to reporters, sent to people that are outside of the community. But for those groups, for those people that we make available some type of publication on a quarterly basis that is trying to explain this data and possibly pulling data from other sources to explain what is going on in homelessness in our community. The second thing that we're looking for is just any conversation or input on the regular use of this data versus point in time data. This data does show just a different lens than what point in time data is. And we're looking for feedback on, really using this data to drive our conversations in the future. So at this point, I'll hand it back over to Michelle to guide the conversation.
Thank you, Ty. Does anybody have any comments about what was presented?
Yes, I do. This is Craig Tripkin from CAS. I don't understand why this information, or at least, why this information and this, in fact, what we've just seen isn't to be made public. I don't quite get what's confidential about gross numbers, and quite honestly, it seems to me it's something that a lot of other parts of the community would like to see and would like to be able to participate in. Can somebody explain to me why this is confidential?
So I think that is precisely the discussion that we'd like to have today. Right now it is set up on a private link, but what we've discussed with all of our data projects is that we wanted to have a conversation with the community, with our providers, everyone on this committee, of what to do with this data. The recommendation of making this available to work groups, committee members, providers, people that are familiar with this was really to encourage thoughtful use of the data rather than folks that might jump to inappropriate conclusions. So I don't think that there was a desire to make the data not available. I think it was more about just making sure that people that could see it and view it would be able to appropriately digest it and understand it.
If I just could say, I think it ought to be available to everybody, and that's in part because our constituencies are far larger than providers or than insiders. Our constituencies include neighborhood people, others, council persons from other cities or from whatever, and I just think that I think the more transparency we can give the general public as to homelessness, the more likely they are going to help participate in creative, nimble solutions.
Hey, this is TJ, if I may, Craig. I think that's great feedback, and I think the intent from the recommendation from the data subcommittee is that there is specific information that overviews this entire dashboard that's produced quarterly that actually gives you analysis of it as well. I think the concern from the data subcommittee is that this is a lot of data with a lot of technical definitions around it. So for example, why is the active number so much lower than the PIT number? We can't necessarily describe every answer to every question that someone has. And the concern that the data will be misrepresented publicly, it may do the opposite of what you're describing, which is support. It can lead to faulty conclusions based on the data that is publicly available. And so from the data subcommittee's perspective, I think providing something quarterly that goes over this exact data, but provides what it means and not just the data there, I think was the concern from that group of just making it public. Like, I think the whole group wanted as much information as possible to inform the public. The concern was that it wouldn't actually inform them. It would confuse or bring faulty conclusions.
And I guess I just simply say that that's a risk that's always being run. And the more information they have, I mean, I just feel that as a general rule, full transparency is really important. Otherwise, we're sort of holding our cards up like we know better than anybody else. Let's deal with it. Let's deal with it if we have a problem.
I have a comment. This is Michelle. I actually like to use something like this versus the pit. I think it's more accurate. I do like the pit, but it's just a point in time. But also I have concerns about, is there a way that you could do it, leave this real-time data in there and then do a quarterly overview as well? My concern is those people that are, if we did it where only the Continuum partners have access to this, let's say that there's a huge shift, like right now when the eviction moratorium goes over and then the homelessness breezes quickly, but if we're just using that quarterly, it's not going to be, accurate. And what happens if a partner uses the real-time data versus somebody that uses the last quarter data? It might be different, if that makes sense.
Michelle, this is Wendy Johnson from Justice Center. I have a related question to what you just brought up, which is what are our restrictions as users of this data in how we share it publicly? Because I think what Craig brought up is accurate. I also think what Michelle brought up is accurate. And we know that there are folks that cherry pick something to reinforce their point, whatever that is. So I'd like to have a better understanding of what our restrictions are with this data. That's it. I like the idea though. Ty, this is great work from you and your team. Thank you so much.
Hi, everybody. This is Dolores, Phoenix Fire. Pardon me. So going with what Craig said, and basically Wendy and Michelle, would it be possible in quarterly reports to put out monthly reports in order to be as transparent as possible if we're not going to give this access to the community at large?
This is
I think
Laura.
that, oh, sorry. This
No,
is
go
TJ. I think that's a possibility. I think we would bring that back because I think the concern would be timeliness, because typically with that you would want to have some time, and I know Jen is the chair of the data subcommittee who's on right now and may be able to provide some insight, but it would just be time sensitivity of like how long would it take to be able to analyze the data that is on here and produce something that is meaningful to the public, which doing that monthly may be a bit tricky. Jen, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I would agree. In general, we've kind of made this comment before out of data subcommittee. As a continuum, we are moving from a space of having almost no data released to tons of data released. So it is sort of building this as we go, but really being mindful of the staff capacity at HMIS, at MAG, within all our agencies, to sit on the committees to do that data analysis, but to also be really thoughtful about how you present this, how you can tie it to the strategies in the regional plan, how you anchor this information within every COC, board, committee, subcommittee agenda, so that you're really starting to develop within our system how we make these data-driven decisions. So that was part of it. And then creating that momentum within the COC that then starts to come out into the greater public. And I feel like there's a lot of city representation and county representation, and actually some state representation across all the COC boards and committees and subcommittees. So there is a really big pool of stakeholders that are going to see this information. And the more you grow it, I think they're going to also come in with their comments and questions on what the data is and how you can use it. I just, because of capacity issues, feel like taking it way big may then put a burden on a lot of people to be explaining all of this all the time versus getting actual work done. So it's going to be a balance. But that was sort of the general feeling coming out of the data subcommittee.
This is Craig of Cass. I guess if I could say something, I think we ought to err on the side of assuming the public is smarter than that. And B, a question, will I have access to this information as a member of this committee? And if not, I think it's disingenuous to say that, well, we'll all use this as a part of our analysis.
This is Laura from Save the Family. TJ, I appreciate your explanation on this, and Jen and Ty, your team's done amazing work. And having served on the data subcommittee for a long time, I do agree with Jen that I do think that the information needs to roll out a bit slowly, not because of not being transparent, but because in the past, some data has been completely misconstrued without a lot of forethought in being able to analyze it first before it was released. And I don't know that we have enough support to make sure that it's rolled out in a way that is beneficial to the programs that serve the community for homelessness. So I appreciate the slow rollout.
If I may again, this is Wendy from Justice Center. One question and just one statement on rollout. I have a background in CRM rollouts, and it is always easier to start small and add than it is to scale something back. So I totally agree with the transparency level, but I affirm the rolling it out a little bit slower. Secondly,
go
ahead, Craig. No, Craig,
I was just going to say, will this committee have access to this information? If so, if not, then it's not even transparent enough to help us make decisions.
So just my quick response is that's why we're bringing it to the committee to request recommendations. And so, like, I just, rather than framing that as a question that I can give a response to, it's going to be the COC board that will be giving kind of the affirmative response to the question. And so I think I'd like to, hear your request, Craig, that like affirmatively you believe that everyone on the committee should have access to this data, right? Like that would be the affirmative statement of like who should have access to it. So at minimum, it should be this group, and preferably it would be this other group. Does that make sense?
And I think all the Continuum members ought to have it. I mean, I frankly think the public ought to have it. I think we're underestimating them. But that said, yes, I think the people who are on this committee, and the Continuum ought to be able to, the board ought to be able to see this information and play with this information and assess it in the way we want. And I don't think you're underestimating our ability to handle the data and message it properly.
No, and can we go back to Wendy also? I think she had a second point.
Ty, real quick, I was just going to say, Craig, the recommendation from the data subcommittee was that it would incorporate all committees, work groups through the continuum of care. So that would be the board, that would be the COC committee, that would be coordinated entry subcommittee, data subcommittees, and all the associated work groups. Just to clarify. Sorry, go ahead, Wendy.
Thank you, TJ.
Ty or TJ, what is the bottom age for your elderly? Are you going with 55, 62, 65? What's the breakoff point for you guys?
I'll have to double check on that one for you, Wendy. I think we decided on 62 was the breakout that we chose for this one.
Okay, I'd like to explore that a little bit further with you all, because there are some types of housing and things like that that are available to 55 and older. And without being able to put them in an elderly count, it doesn't help us make the case with landlords and things like that. So if we can get a way to get that information, like expanded, or please include 55 up in this checkbox with it or something, I would appreciate that. And I think anybody working with the elderly from Azanam on, we all consider 55 elderly. I know HUD doesn't. So if we're doing this to be in HUD compliance, that's different, but that's just my suggestion. I always can find a way to work around that. Thank you.
Hey, this is Michelle. I just have a couple comments. Is if we do decide to do that, where only certain people have access to the real-time data, that I would assume like a user agreement would have to be designed or something to make sure that they use it appropriately or for the intended. One of my thoughts are, if we depend on the data for grants, and so if homelessness is on the increase, then that will give us, more funding options in need. And I don't know if quarterly would do that. I still like the concept of having the real-time data access for people to have access to it, but then do a quarterly summary, like you were talking about, to implement both. But it's just, we just have to make sure that people are going to use the data appropriately with the agreement, or if only some people have that access.
This is Laura. I have an additional question. Since I'm assuming this is all of Maricopa County, I'm wondering, is there a way, in case elected officials want to know by parts of the valley, can this also be broken out by city or sections of Maricopa County?
So my response to that one, Laura, is that that type of analysis is a lot trickier in terms of like coming up with those definitions, and the work to produce this level of detail by municipality over that period of time is really burdensome from just a technical perspective to be able to do at this point. So I think that I would be interested in coming up with sort of the anticipated ways to be able to describe the regional efforts differently than this particular system flow dashboard, just because of the technical limitations and some of the definitional items. It gets really tricky to be able to describe that.
I completely understand. Thanks, Ty. I appreciate the answer.
Are there any other comments?
I will just say this. I think that the data subcommittee and HMIS at Solari have come a long way, and this is fantastic data. And I appreciate all the work that's been done on this.
Thanks, Laura.
I'm not sure. So do we want to do a motion to approve the system flow dashboard and shared public visibility? I'm not sure if we came to an agreement or. Oh. All right.
Madam Chair, may I?
You may, thank you.
Okay, thanks. So this is on the agenda for potential action. Should the committee choose to accept that. It is a recommendation for approval. So this will go to the board for their consideration. If the committee wants more time or more information on any aspect of that, we can certainly delay it, but otherwise this would go on the board agenda, and we would know if the committee chose not to take action, but we want to move forward at a pace that the committee feels comfortable with, and to respect your direction in that space. So right now it is on for a recommendation for approval, and you can follow the recommendation that was made by the data subcommittee or choose to adapt that depending on the will of the committee. So just to clarify the ask today.
Thank you. And so are we recommending for it to be visible only to COC partners and then presented quarterly to the public.
I believe that's consistent with the direction of the data subcommittee.
Okay.
Yeah, and Madam Chair, the main thing that, in addition to that, is the emphasis on. So it'd be exactly what you just said, but also sort of the shift in focus of emphasizing this as our definitions of describing the homelessness issue here, and using the PIT as a supplement versus just using the PIT as our primary mechanism for describing. So it'd be both of those things combined.
Correct. Oh, thank you, TJ. So do I have a motion to recommend the approval of how the system flow dashboard may be shared and publicly visible?
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, that was Craig, and I didn't catch who seconded it.
Laura, second.
Thank you, Laura.
You're welcome.
Is there a discussion for the motion? Okay, so now I will ask Chantel to
Actually,
proceed with
Michelle,
the roll call.
sorry, this is
Okay.
DC. Yeah,
Hi,
I just want to thank Jen and TJ for sharing that information. It really is helping me form my opinion. Thank you.
All right, thank you, DC. So now I'll have Chantel proceed with the roll call vote. Please indicate clearly if starting with yay or nay after your name is called.
Thank you, Chair. Anna Verdugo.
Hello. Yay.
Thank you. Richard Cruz. Letitia Gambino.
Yay.
Thank you. Kathy Dinolfi.
Yay.
Thank you, Kathy. DC Ernst.
Yay.
Thank you. Michelle Jameson.
Sorry, I got off mute. Yay.
Thank you, Michelle. Wendy Johnson.
Yay.
Thank you. Anne Marie Johnston.
Yay.
Thanks, Anne Marie. Laura Magruder.
Yay.
Thanks, Laura. Jen Page.
This is Matthew Kelly for Jen Page. Yay.
Thank you, Matthew. Detective Aaron Rain.
Yay.
Thank you. Gerardo Pina. Filling in for
Yay.
Nikki Ramirez. Thank you, Gerardo. Ty Rosensteel.
Yay.
Thanks, Ty. Shayla Schuster, she come on? All right. Sarah Sims.
Yay.
Thank you, Sarah. Laura Skotnicki.
Yay.
Thanks, Laura. And Craig Tripkin.
Yay.
Thanks, Craig. Did I miss anybody? All right, the motion passes.
All right, thank you. So I just want to quick give out honorable mention to TJ. You will soon find out that he's going to be doing a lot of one-on-one talking with us this morning. So he's on the next couple of agendas. So with that said, TJ, who is the Regional Homeless Project Manager at MAG, will provide an update on the Regional Homeless Strategies and Action Plan. TJ?
All right, thank you, Madam Chair. Let me pull up my screen really quick so you all can see the presentation. Oh, it looks like I am unable to share currently. Chantel, would you be able to pull up the presentation I sent?
Yes, I can do that. Just give me
All
one
right,
second.
thank you. Well, and so while we're, as this is sharing, I will also echo from the last point. There are very few communities that, and if you want to go into presentation mode, there are very few communities who have the level of data that the HMIS team just provided. And it is a monumental accomplishment for us to be at the space to even have the discussion and agree and disagree with each other on that. So I'll get on to this point, but I needed to gush just a little bit because it's really awesome to be able to have those discussions. Okay, so with this one, we are going to be talking, giving the Continuum of Care Committee an update on the regional strategies and actions happening. And this is going to be now a consistent item each committee meeting to make sure that you all feel up to speed on this. And in between meetings, you can always reach out to myself, Nikki, or Amy to get an update on where things are. So next slide, please. So what we're going to be talking about is just the current status of what's happening, going over the goals and some clarifications around what is going on. Reviewing some cost scenarios that we've worked on based on a lot of feedback from yourself, the role of this committee, and then what is coming next. So the next slide, please. All right, so this is really what has happened to date, and this is very oversimplified of what has been happening, but we have really embarked on a long process of hosting lots of forums, conducting surveys, getting a lot of information to inform regional strategies. There were review, as you can see under the second portion with research, there was talking with many of you, there was research of national best practices, development of tools to understand need and capacities. And then finally, in our strategies, really identifying high-level topic areas of focus, and then 14 very specific strategies. These went before the board in May of 2021. Many of you, if not all of you, were involved in the processes up to this point of developing those strategies. And then the last thing that we've really focused on is building out cost projections, which again, many of you have kind of informed that based on your programmatic budgets. Next slide, please. And so what I wanted to do before we get into other items is just reference again what has been adopted and where you can find it. I have the link, and that will be attached to the PDF online. You can find it on MAG's website under the regional strategies section. And there's a ton of good information there. So I would encourage you all, if you are interested in reviewing any of this further, you can please go to the website. And again, this was adopted or was recommended for action in May of 2021 by this board, and it went through regional council. Next slide. And so the top categories are homelessness, diversion, and prevention. And you can see the bullet points are going to be the 14 strategies. So I'm not going to go through all of them. I just want to kind of reiterate and make sure that they were on this PowerPoint so that you could see all of them. So this is really focused on coordinating and expanding prevention and diversion efforts across the county. Next slide, please. Coordination. This is really engaging with lots of diverse stakeholders and data, including focus on race and equity, engaging with people with lived experience, making sure that every single thing that we do is incorporating those that are impacted most by it. Next slide, please. Housing options, as you can imagine, any homeless strategy is going to have a pretty robust strategy related to housing. And so this really focuses on increasing affordable housing, leveraging the funds that exist, landlord engagement, and really expanding flexible funding and lots of other options within this. Next slide, please. And then the next two are services and temporary housing. So the services focused on evaluating and enhancing coordinated entry, but also expanding on employment assistance and then any other progress towards improvement of getting people through the system flow quicker and into more positive outcomes. And then the temporary housing options just talk about strengthening our regional approach to helping our unsheltered population and then increasing bridge housing. Next slide, please. And so I I didn't want to go through that, and there's not a quiz after on those 14. What I wanted to just make sure is that we're all level set on what went through our board in May of 2021, and what the point of those are is very high level, right? In that it is not a specific goal associated with any of those or a specific action. It is, we want to improve this, or we want to ensure we do this, right? But it doesn't get very specific. And so where we're at now is building capacity and regional ownership within our local and tribal government in their collaboration with you all in the provider community. So it has not happened in this way before, but in pulling in all of our local and tribal governments to really engage in this conversation of homelessness and talk about specific actions that they can take, but also what are regional things that we can all get on board with. Can you go to the next slide, please? And so what this entails is kind of three big buckets. Is what can we get in terms of consensus on simply just taking action on homelessness? So our local and tribal governments, can we agree that homelessness is a problem and together start to take action, whatever way, shape, or form that would be? One of those ways would be in regional actions, things that you are a part of as a local and tribal government that are bigger than just your municipality. So one of those ideas was, the regional landlord engagement, right? That applies to you locally, but it also is regional in the sense that it is not just you that it applies to. And then lastly is really defining the local structure. So, if I'm Youngtown or Litchfield, my actions that I'm taking may be different than the city of Phoenix and Mesa, right? That they're completely different areas. And so the idea here is that people are taking action, and it is in alignment with some of these strategies to ensure that we're moving in the same direction. Next slide, please. So what we're really producing right now, and I wanted to give a shout out to many of you on the phone. So we are providing a menu of options for action, which are based on national best practices. And then you all have been a part of that. So just a few weeks ago, we had our coordinated entry leads really share a lot on diversion with our local municipalities to ensure that they understood what that is and make sure that if they were interested in implementing something like that, what it would entail. We've had many others, Dee Dee from Native American Connections was on this last call on Monday to share about affordability and some of the programs that they're doing. And those are just a couple of examples of exciting ways in which providers have been providing expertise to this group. And so this list of actions is going to be is something that is being drafted right now and will be submitted to the COC for feedback and additional expertise, what is missing, what needs to be adjusted, et cetera. Next slide, please. And so that is really what is happening right now in terms of our time frame is identifying those actions, and then in September, likely, I don't want to put a specific day on it, but in September, these will go before the board and this committee of getting volunteers to really dig in deep to this, because there's a lot of detail to these things, right? And even if we took the entire committee meeting and board meeting, we don't know if that would be enough time to really delve into some of the things and for people to have the time necessary to review it. But then October will be reviewing and revising, and then November and December, this will go through similarly to how it went through before. The Continuum of Care Board will vote on it, and it will go all the way up through Regional Council, which is voted on by all local and tribal governments that are our member agencies. Next slide, please. And so the next thing that I wanted to share with you, which is mainly because you all have really invested so much into this, I wanted to make sure that you're seeing on the back end what this looks like. So many of you provided budgets for us. I mean, I won't list them off, but I think we got budget information from over 20 agencies related to different interventions. And that helped formulate what level of impact. So we worked with the HMIS team and a few other stakeholders in building the structure here. But if you can go to the next slide, what the focus is on what would happen if we reduced chronic homelessness by 50%, reduced family homelessness by 50% based on our current HMIS data. What would we need to do that? And these were just 2 mile markers that we thought were agreed to by stakeholders to say, let's check this out. So next slide, please. So the overall costs that were determined for each of these, and the emphasis is listed here. So you can see in the middle there how many units are needed to do this and what the annual operating and capital costs are. So operating is everything it takes to consistently run a program. And one-time costs are simply just building. So if you're purchasing property, if you're purchasing land and building from the ground up, that's how much it would cost. And so if you go to the next slide, you'll see for scenario 1, this is the breakdown of those 1764 units. So they're broken down into traditional emergency shelter, low barrier, bridge, rapid, and PSH. And this was to resolve 50% of those that are on our active list that are chronically homeless. I want to put a couple of notes here. Some of you may have seen this or some of you may have not, but in our non-congregate bridge housing and permanent supportive housing, we have placed percentages on each of those, that some of those would go to voucher only, some of those would go to renovation of a property that already exists, and some would go to actually just purchasing land and building from the ground up. So for example, if you were to literally just buy land and build up units for 543 permanent supportive housing units, it would be a lot more capital than 47 million. It's just that is based on percentages of some of those going to voucher only, which has 0 capital costs, right? Because that's using existing landlords and structure. And so I just wanted to call that out, but you can see these numbers, and this is regionally really what it would take to make this level of impact. And so for chronic homelessness, you can see that there's a high investment into the housing opportunity, specifically PSH, because of the level of acuity that we're talking about. Next slide, please. And this one really focuses on our families, the active list that was provided by HMIS and the Family Housing Hub of the current families and what it would take to reduce that. And that would be really heavy investment in rapid rehousing, because that's typically the most common solution for families. Doesn't mean that permanent supportive housing or any of the other options aren't needed. As you can see, there are small investments in each of those, but that rapid rehousing is cost effective and very common. And so you'll see that the capital costs are a lot lower here too, because of that fact. If there was more in those other categories, the capital costs would be a lot higher. Next slide, please. Okay, and so what we're looking for on as your role in this process really is to continue doing what you have been doing, honestly. As many of you have been very proactive in reaching out, being a part of meetings, presenting, doing lots of action to engage. And we would just ask that you continue to do that, especially as this process is continuing. And then providing feedback on all of the stuff that you've heard today and that you will receive, whether that is in this meeting or outside of it. So you're receiving a lot of information right now, and you'll be able to review this presentation on our website based on the notes and what is provided. So I wouldn't anticipate that everybody has gotten through all of their questions or formulated questions based on what you've seen. But if you have feedback on the scenarios, so the goal of these scenarios and the goal of that cost analysis is to say, when we're coming forward to political leaders, like, what would it actually take to make an impact, right? So are there better ways to frame that? Are there things that should or shouldn't be included? Reviewing the menu of options, which we'll share in the next several weeks, like I mentioned, and there will be a volunteer group that really digs into those, and then continuing to do presentations and mentoring. Next slide, please. All right, so the next specific steps is we're continuing to draft the menu of options. we have a meeting set up later in the month with local tribal government to review more of these options. And then, as I've mentioned a couple of times, the regional COC board will determine volunteers to review, provide feedback, and additions to that menu of options. And so you can, and we would love for you to be a part of that process. And then also, like I said, please provide as much feedback, or if you want to set some time to meet with me outside of this to discuss, I'm more than willing to do that to make sure we can answer any and all questions based on the progress of something that you all have been a part of for many months. And then the last couple of months has been a little bit quieter. So next slide, please. All right, and then as you all know, Nikki, myself, and Amy are on here. So any questions, any feedback outside of this meeting, please reach out to us. And back to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, TJ. Are there any comments from the committee? All right, well, thank you. Thanks for the presentation, TJ. We will go on to agenda item number 6, which is again with TJ. So TJ will provide an update on recent trainings and people referred through the coordinated entry system. TJ.
Awesome. Hello again, everybody. It's been a while. So the EHV program, which hopefully everybody's aware of now, but it's emergency housing vouchers. This last week we held 2 trainings, and they are all of the documentation and the presentation itself and the recording of the training is available on MAG's website. It is under the COVID response section. And if you scroll down, you'll see that there is an EHV button that you can press and see all of the things. So we were able to do training for just about 200 plus people in that 1 week. And we've received countless calls and email requests for additional information. Our coordinated, I want to give a huge shout out to our coordinated entry lead with the Family Housing Hub at UMOM and with the Human Services Campus. Michelle and Matthew from the Human Services Campus, Anna, Gamma, Randy, and Elizabeth from the Hub have just been incredible. They have done, I believe, hundreds of referrals now to PHAs, received lots of information and referrals and requests. I wanted to give a shout out and also an acknowledgement of your capacity. We see this, we are working with that to see how we can support, but it is a huge kudos to this group who has made this process from the start going through quickly. The PHAs, we just had a meeting yesterday and all of them reported they've been satisfied with the work from the Continuum and the coordinated entry leads based on how much has been done even just over the last week. So things are progressing along this implementation, and please, any questions that you have, I would love to answer, but our main messaging that we're getting out to people about how to engage with this is not even calling it out by name. It's not just saying like, hey, do you want a voucher? Call coordinated entry. It's if somebody is in need of homeless services, let's get you connected to an access point. Those access points have access to tons of tools, one of which is EHV vouchers. We just don't want to set people up for failure by saying, yeah, just call a number and get a voucher, because as we all know, you've probably all experienced that in one way, shape, or form in your careers. That's not a fun conversation to have as the person requesting or as the person who's a recipient of that. So that's the update for EHVs, and happy to take any questions or comments on it. Back to you, Michelle.
Thank you, TJ. Any comments, questions? All right. Thank you. We will move on to agenda item number 7. Nikki Stevens with the Regional Homeless Program Manager at MAG will provide an update on the upcoming trainings with racial equity partners. Nikki.
Hello, Madam Chair and members of the committee. Thank you for allowing me to just kind of give you an update as where we're at as a community on racial equity training. We did have a great turnout yesterday. It was our first training in this fall series, August 10th. We had about 97 participants. that registered, and we had great conversations around addressing implicit bias in our programs. And so, it was, when we started this conversation, it was kind of a larger picture, and now we're kind of delving into things that individuals can do within their organizations and as allies. So our next session is session 2 on Tuesday, September 14th from 2 o'clock to 4 o'clock. And that's going to be on allyship and activism. So if you need any information around the sessions that are coming up, please feel free to reach out to me. We also have another one that's coming up on internalized racism and racial healing, which will occur on Tuesday, October 12th from 2 to 4. This is a free training. I encourage everybody to register. Racial Equity Partners has really put a lot of thought and emphasis on the feedback that was provided when they met with community members in trying to address the inequities that we see in our homeless response system and how we as organizations can get better at addressing racial inequities. So I invite you all to join us in these great discussions. And there should be more information to come, from the Arizona Housing Coalition as well, where we are trying to, based on if the Delta variant allows us to, have Jeff from Racial Equity Partners and Donald Whitehead come out and train the community, get some more one-on-one time, and they're open to additional discussions with the community. So please feel free to reach out to me if I can answer any questions or if you need additional information around the training. And thank you all to those who participated and made a difference and the things that you're doing both internally as a person and for your organization. Let me know if you have any questions. Thank you. Back to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Nikki. Are there any questions for the committee, from the committee? We're a quiet group today. Okay, so we'll just go on to updates. So an update will be provided on legislative issues of interest, and the Maricopa Regional Community Care Board and subcommittee members will provide an update on recent activities. This item was requested as an ongoing agenda item by the COC committee to remain informed about the work taking place legislatively and in the various subcommittees. So we will start with COC board member Joan Service, Joan, Executive Director with the Arizona Housing Coalition, to provide a legislative and board update. Joan?
Hi, thank you all. I'm not going to go on camera because no one wants to see the mess that I am right now. I am happy to report that we had some legislative success this past legislative session. We were successful in enacting a state affordable housing tax credit. And that's been something that we've been working on for the past few years. It is smaller than we were hoping for. We're kind of considering it a pilot project, but it's an exciting process nonetheless. Basically, if you're not familiar with what this state affordable housing tax credit is, it mirrors the federal low-income housing tax credit and will be enveloped into the qualified allocation plan, specifically for 4% deals. But basically, it serves as an additional layer of funding to make affordable housing development work, which is something that, as the work that we all do, we need both support services and housing units. And so this is that kind of mechanism to create more housing units. It is one of the single largest investments from the state towards affordable housing development. It's a $4 million credit over 4 years. And so that basically represents about $160 million investment. We are obviously excited about it. We wanted a little bit more. We were actually, I think our initial bill introduction was an $8 million credit over 10 years, sunsetting after 6 years. But nonetheless, let's go forth and prove efficacy, and then go back to the state legislature in future years to build upon that success. The Arizona Department of Housing was quick to put out a stakeholder meeting to seek comments on how they should enact that state low-income housing tax credit. And they held a meeting, and they're taking those comments and including that in the qualified allocation plan, or QAP. As far as the Arizona Housing Coalition is concerned, you know, our comments have been, let's get it out effectively, show it's a, I'm screwing up the words now, effective, efficacy, and equitable. I want to make sure it's across the state. It's not just a Maricopa or Pima thing, but it's, you know, across the state. So that was a big success this this past legislative session. Although I will share, you know, we walked into the session with tempered expectations because of the fact that there was such a significant federal investments coming in as part of the COVID-19 response. And so we knew that because that was, and that's a good kind of tempered approach because we, our other legislative priority was to restore the State Housing Trust Fund. And with the federal influx of funds, we knew that would be an uphill battle. So as was expected, we did not get the Housing Trust Fund restored, although we continue to build legislative champions. And it's honestly really cool, probably a bit of a nerd for saying this, but it's really cool when state legislators bring up the Housing Trust Fund as a crucial component to address housing and homeless services. So that's exciting. I will share there was a couple other successful things included in the budget. One being, if you all remember, not too long ago, Access submitted a waiver to CMS around housing and health opportunities. And so the budget basically allows Access some expenditure authority for when that waiver gets approved. So that's something that, I mean, it's, while it looks like it's $60 million coming from the state budget, it's actually not from the state budget. It's actually from the federal government, and it's just basically kind of a perfunctory blessing to Access to go forth and do the things they should be doing once CMS approves their request. The other cool thing is that there was a provision for $1 million for homeless youth. To be expended from Department of Economic Security beginning in fiscal year 24. That's when the state general fund will be on the hook for contributing $1 million to address homeless youth. Before that, though, the budget does include provisions to allow for some of the federal funds that the state has received to go towards addressing homeless youth. So that's exciting. And then finally, I don't know if Craig wants to talk about this, but there was included in the budget was kind of the authority to allow for the Department of Housing to dedicate some of the funds that they have from the federal COVID-19 response to create a West Valley shelter for seniors. So again, it gave the Department of Housing that authority to allocate those funds towards that West Valley senior shelter. And then I'm trying to think if I'm forgetting anything. I think that's it. You know, obviously we're going to be we're in the process of developing our legislative agenda going into this next legislative session, which begins in January, with the idea knowing that obviously the federal funds are going to be tapped out at some point. We obviously are in this kind of great place where we have the federal influx of funds. We've got the infrastructure package, which just got, you know, approved, and then a conversation about the budget reconciliation package being discussed and how that could benefit a lot of the programs that we work within. But one of the things that the Housing Coalition has been really, you know, a vocal proponent of is more of a state investment. So we would like to go definitely into our next legislative session talking about the Housing Trust Fund restoration, and then we're exploring what other policy priorities we're going to put forth. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions or comments.
Okay. Thank you, Joan. If there's no questions, we will go on to Coordinated Entry Subcommittee Chair Matthew Kelly, the lead housing liaison with Mercy Care.
Hi there. Thanks for having me. I have a couple of quick updates for Coordinated Entry. There's a number of things that we're up to, and you may have heard some of the work, but I think this is our first update to the committee. So we've been working to expand the membership. Right now, we currently have 8 members on the coordinated entry subcommittee. We have a total capacity of 14. We did put out a call for membership, and we have 9 applications that are ready to be reviewed for coordinated entry. So we're looking forward to having a full committee by next month, or September, actually. A couple of other things that we're working on. There was a call to integrate ESG homeless prevention dollars into the coordinated entry system. And so we're working with Christy Dye and the homeless prevention providers in the system right now to develop a process to integrate that into coordinated entry. We actually have a meeting right after this to discuss that and kind of go through the policy document that we worked on extensively at the last meeting. And now we're going to be looking at the tool that we're going to be implementing as part of the prioritization for that system. We are typically, where the tool we're using is going to be a modified version of what the VA system is currently using. So the hope is that we're able to quickly modify that, to be able to move forward. With regards to racial equity, there's also some work happening this week as well. We have Racial Equity Partners has arranged for, I believe it's Washington, D.C., Austin, Texas, Minneapolis, Minnesota, and the full state of Minnesota, as well as Tucson, to come and present on the changes that they have made with their coordinated entry system, specifically looking at changing away from the VI SPDAT and looking at what tools they're using in their community and how we might be able to use some of that information to make some decisions here in Maricopa County. So that's super exciting just to kind of hear what other communities are doing. So maybe we don't have to recreate the wheel. So I'm super excited for that. I don't know if that might be a little bit geeky, but you know, anyways. The other thing, coordinated entry is clearly up to a lot of work, and we've got a lot going on, not only with EHV and the racial equity work along with prevention. So we are actually changing our meeting structure. We are starting to meet twice a month now. So instead of meeting once a month for an hour and a half, we're meeting twice a month for an hour. So every 2 weeks we're meeting. So one meeting we do that's going to be strictly kind of like updates and kind of check-in and data reporting out and that kind of stuff. And then the second meeting is really going to be focused on specific action items that we're looking to work on. So one is kind of that working meeting and the other is more of the regular updates that we're having. That seems to be working out really well so far. So as long as that works and as long as there's a need within the committee, we're going to continue that structure. If we find out we don't need 2 meetings, then I'm happy to go back to 1, but that's where we are today. And then we are also, one of the things that you all will probably be seeing next month in your meeting is a review of the roles and responsibilities. So as part of, I think, kind of refocusing the subcommittee, we kind of looked at the coordinated entry subcommittee's roles and responsibilities. And while we're not making any significant suggestions on changes, we're kind of tweaking some of the language and kind of looking to, I think, refine those roles and responsibilities so that the committee can act on those items, I think, more clearly. So you'll be seeing a draft version of that that will be coming to the COC committee next month. So yeah, are there any questions on any of that work?
No, but great work, Matthew.
Oh, thank you. I do want to say that this is like clearly because the coordinated entry subcommittee is willing to do all of this work and people are stepping up and doing extra meetings and making this happen. So I want to thank everybody on the committee for taking the extra time. Coordinated entry is super busy right now. So to take the extra time to do this is really a big deal. So thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody have any comments for Matthew? All right, thank you, Matthew. We will next go to agenda item number 9. Do any committee members have action or discussion items for future meetings? Okay. Hearing none, we will go on to agenda item number 10. For the next agenda item, comments for the committee. Is there anyone in the committee that has any announcements or events that they would like to highlight?
This is Laura with Save the Family. I just wanted to let you know that this will be my last committee meeting. I am going to be transitioning from Save the Family, but my proxy will take over my position with Save the Family. And my hope is that I will, in my new role, I'll be able to apply when the applications roll out again for committee membership. And thanks everybody for allowing me to work with you all over the years. And I appreciate the hard work that everybody does.
Thank you, Laura, for your dedication to the committee and the community. You have been, I don't want to cry, but you have been a wonderful mentor and colleague, and I appreciate everything you've done on behalf of the families that you serve. So thank you.
Thanks, Nikki.
Yes, we wish you luck, but I'm assuming that by hearing that we'll still be working with you in some capacity going forward.
Yes, I'm staying in homeless services. I just can't announce yet where.
Well, we look forward to hearing.
Thank you.
We wish you luck. Any other items to discuss or comments? Okay, so no further business. The meeting is now adjourned. So, thank you. Have a good day.